Hi guys, so today I'm back with a video that's been requested by people on Patreon. So if you don't know, I have a Patreon where you can support me financially with $1 to up to more, but $1 is more than enough. And if you support me with like $3 or more a month, you can request video ideas, and one topic that came back very frequently was my anxiety and how I deal with it and how I cope with it and what has changed for me and whatnot. So I have talked about my anxiety before on this channel. I've talked about it in French and in English. I've talked about it more in English because it's a lot easier for me to open up about this in English. And also just the vocabulary that I use to describe my anxiety, I know more in English and it feels more accurate in English than it feels in French. So yeah. So just a little bit of a background if you have no idea. I was diagnosed with social anxiety and with a generalized anxiety disorder. I went to therapy for about 5 years when I was I think 19 or 18, probably 19. So yeah, it's quite a long time. And I stopped because of financial reasons and because of time. So I feel like I really need to get back to therapy. It's been about a year since I've really felt like I need to go back to therapy. I absolutely need to go back to therapy. But to be honest with you, I cannot afford it right now. And I don't have time either. Now that I'm working as a teacher full-time, I mean, not full-time as a teacher, but I'm working full-time. And I don't really have any time for appointments. And I do not have the money. In France, with the social health care and social health insurance system, whatever, you basically can go to the psychiatrist and you don't really pay anything. But I do not want to go to a psychiatrist. I do not want to take any medication, and most of the psychiatrists I know and I've known, they don't really do talking therapy. They listen to you for a few minutes and they give you pills. I know it's not every psychiatrist on the planet, but it is definitely the majority of them, and that's absolutely not what I want. What I want is a psychologist or a psychoanalyst, and it is fucking expensive, so yeah. But I've never really talked in depth and like absolute accuracy of what I suffer from online because I just don't want to. Let's just say that I do not have only social anxiety. Well, I hate saying it like that because it makes it sound like something shameful. It makes it sound like something I should be keeping secret, or it even feels like, well, basically I have depression. And to be honest with you, I do not know if I have depression at the moment. I think I do because I haven't been to therapy in 2 years, so it's a bit difficult for me to say. And I do not like self-diagnosis, but I feel like I am in a pretty rough state. So I would say that yes. So I'm just gonna start with how my anxiety has evolved. When I was a child, I was always very anxious about different things, but they seemed to be really isolated and I never made the connection, and no one else did really. I think it all started to really turn into something more serious when I went to Paris and I was in a different environment, a lot of stress, a lot of changes, a lot of responsibilities. I had to do a lot of things by myself, and my parents had just got divorced. There were a lot of things happening, and that's when it all went down in a very vicious spiral that I could not resist at all. And at that time, my anxiety was so freaking strong that I could not really leave the house. I could not take public transport. I could not go to school. I could not pick up the phone. I could not attend even like doctor's appointment because I was incapable of being in a room with other patients waiting to get to the doctor. It was real bad. It was very, very, very bad. Therapy helped me greatly. So for people who ask me what really helped you, therapy, 100% therapy. I never took pills. My therapist was a psychologist, so most of the sessions that we had, it was purely talking therapy. We would talk about things. We would see each other once a week for the majority of the time. Yes, we saw each other once a week. And it really, really helped. She taught me how to cope with things. She taught me how to take one thing at a time, step by step. The advice that she gave me were really easy, but when someone, easy, simple, like obvious things that you kind of forget when you have anxiety. And I think the benevolence that she gave me, and also just talking to her, made me realize I had a lot of issues going on that I didn't think were related to my anxiety at the time, but they actually were. And then we really focused on my body because I have issues. I think for me, because everyone's different, for me my anxiety really is linked to my body. I've never really talked about it that much, but I am not comfortable. Like, I know I talked about body positivity, I know I talk about loving your body, I know I talk about keeping your hair and embracing your fat and your cellulite and your stretch marks and, you know, all those things. And I do believe in that, and I'm honest when I talk about it. But for me, you know, I have a difficult relationship to my body in the sense of feeling my body among others. Just keeping it, feeling strong, feeling safe in my body. It's really difficult for me. I've always hated sports and moving around because I just don't think I'm a very physical person. I'm someone who's very often in my mind, and that means that I don't know how to use my body very much. And it was definitely linked to my anxiety too, and learning how to do things with my body, learning how to trust it, learning how to use it to calm me down when I was feeling anxious was definitely helpful, because when I have anxiety I sweat a lot, I get really weak in the legs, I have sometimes stomach aches and I need to go to the bathroom, maybe TMI, but you know, I also blush. Oh my god, it's the one thing I hate the most. I blush like crazy. Like, it's not just blushing a little bit that's cute, it's like I'm getting super red, super hot, and I just, it's insane. And when I feel that I'm getting super red, I get even more anxious, and it's just disastrous. I also feel very disconnected from the world, so whenever I'm super anxious, I feel like I cannot see properly, I cannot hear properly. It feels like everything, I receive everything with, you know, some minutes late. So yeah, it's, you know, it has to do a lot with your body, I believe. Of course it's psychological, but also just how you are with yourself as a physical being, to me, was greatly helpful. So the last part of the therapy, we really focused on that, and it really changed me. It changed a lot of things for me. So for a while I felt good, and I still feel much better than I was when I was 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. But my anxiety has now developed into more precise forms, I believe. Like, I feel very agoraphobic. I mean, it's not really agoraphobic. I looked up the term before and I completely forgot. I am afraid of not being outside, and not the fact necessarily that there are a lot of people, but I'm afraid of a lot of people next to me. For example, I get super anxious when someone is close to me. I get super anxious in the line at the shops. I get super anxious when the metro is full. I get very anxious when someone looks at me straight in the eyes. It's like whenever I feel like my personal space is kind of invaded, I get super anxious. And I also get now really anxious when I am in a closed and small environment. It kind of manifested itself in the beginning as well, but now if I am in a room, I need to open the window. If I am in the metro or the bus, I need to be next to the window. I need to be sitting down, possibly not too far away from the door, and I just don't feel good at all. So those two things are mostly when it manifests itself, like whenever I feel like people are too close to me, and whenever I feel like I am trapped. And in those moments, I feel extremely anxious, and depending on how tired I am, depending on how stressed I am for the things in my life, possibly depending on my cycle, I have no idea, there are moments where I cannot handle it, like I cannot, so I just flee. And I wish I could tell you, you know, do this and do that and do this and do that and you'll be, you know, fine. But I don't really think that's how it works. For me, first thing I would suggest, and I've suggested it before, is go to see a doctor, go to see a therapist, because I could not have done it without my therapist, honestly. Then I think it's really important to just get to know your anxiety, or get to know your whatever it is. But, you know, I'm talking mostly about anxiety because I feel like every mental health condition is very specific. It's very specific, and then depending on the people it's even more specific. So, you know, I'm just gonna stick with anxiety. Get to know your anxiety. For the longest time I didn't want to think about it. For the longest time I was so afraid of the anxiety that I could not look at it, that I could not experience it, that I could not confront it, and therefore I had a lot of unknown spots and unknown possibilities that were even more scary. So I think that now I do know what makes me anxious. I do know what I can do. I do know my limits, and I do know when I can push them, when I can try. I have learned also, as I said, being really in touch with my body, to recognize the first signs of what could be a panic attack, or what could be a really stressful or just anxious moment. Not stressful, anxious. Like, I know sometimes how I breathe, I know how I feel, I just feel it somehow. And I have learned to not push myself too much. So sometimes I just do not take the metro because I know if I enter this metro, I'm gonna get super anxious. So I'd rather walk, or I'd rather sit, breathe, listen to some music, do something, and then get into the next metro. I've also learned to say no, because I was so ashamed of myself that I could not explain people. So I still do not I still don't explain. I still don't talk about it. I have also learned that for me personally, I do not like telling people about it, because I think that 80% of the time people do not have a proper and adequate reaction to it. They don't take it seriously, they make fun of it, they say, oh, I'm stressed as well, oh, I'm anxious too sometimes, or they get just real weird. So I don't talk about it most of the time, like 95% of the time I don't talk about it, but I just say no very firmly, like, no, I don't want to do this, no, I'd rather get out, no, I'd rather eat alone, no, I just don't feel comfortable doing that, no, I don't really fancy doing this. And especially at work, because I feel like nowadays it's, no one expects people to be introverted, no one expects people to have mental health issues, so it's like a constant stream of social events and social things that you are required to do. Well, I've said fuck that. If I am not required to do it in the contract, if I'm not paid for it, I don't do it if I don't feel capable of doing it. And that's it, that's the extent of it. And that's just the same for my relationships. If like I'm explaining it to you, because if you're in a relationship, you're my friend, I explain, and that's it. I'm not gonna push myself too much for you. Like, what's the point? Would you do this? Would I expect you? Would I demand that of you? No. So no reason for me to put myself in such a stressful moment for nothing. No reason at all. I've also really noticed that, you know, people hate to hear that, but depending on how you sleep, how you eat, what your house feels like, it is gonna affect your anxiety. For me, oh my god, when I cannot sleep too much, I get really anxious. When I know that where I am is a mess, and when I know I have so many things to do, like most people, you get stressed out, right? But for me, as someone who has social anxiety and who has a generalized anxiety disorder, it's not I'm stressed, it's I get super panicky, I get super anxious, and to the point where sometimes I do things that are not good. So yeah, be kind to yourself, know your enemy. That would be the biggest things. For me, I think, you know, it really was therapy, and it really was accepting it and just making myself a priority. I think also that anxiety comes from sometimes not accepting what your boundaries and your limits are. And at least for me, that's how it was, and that's something I'm really working on. You know, just like you know, for example, just solo traveling. That's something I like to do, but it's, oh my god, it's really hard when you have anxiety. It's hard for most people, and it's even harder, of course, when you have anxiety. So even if it doesn't sound super nice, even if some people make fun of me for that, even if some people make, you know, little comments, yes, I do take a cab every time from the airport to the airport, unless I know the city super well. Yes, I book an Airbnb and not a hostel because I don't want to be among other people, around other people. Yes, you know, it doesn't fit into the ideal image of what a traveler is like, but I have anxiety, I want to have a good time, I want to protect myself, I'm gonna do it. Yes, it's ridiculous that I have to open the window and that I have to move out and off the table because when I'm having dinner with someone I get super anxious, but yes, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. Now, let's be honest, I feel like my anxiety is growing bigger and getting stronger. It has felt that way for a couple of years. I feel like it's not transformed, basically. I feel like it's affecting me in different moments, different places, and in different ways, and it's very unsettling because, you know, just when you kind of get used to a certain form of anxiety and when you kind of know what to do, it takes different shape, and you're like, oh my god, I did not have that before, how can I deal with that? And it'd be much easier if I had a psychologist or a therapist to go to, but as I said, I can't really afford it. So yeah. Oh wow. And the internet. As much as it's always very difficult to talk about, I feel like online I have found people who understand it and who accept it and who do it in a very polite and benevolent way, and it's so nice. It really feels comforting to not have to explain yourself too much and to have people that just say, oh yeah, must be hard with anxiety, dot. You know, not get into a pathetic self-pitying thing or not give you 100 of advice or whatever, you know. So yeah, that's all for now. I hope this video was somehow interesting. It was kind of like a raw emotion thingy where I just gave you an update on my anxiety. Super nice. I hope you are doing amazingly well. I hope you are getting the help that you need. I hope you are being kind to yourself. Really, I do hope sincerely for all of that. And I hope you're also just I hope you're just also realizing that we're all different, and yes, it's not just a difference. Yes, it's a trouble. Yes, it's an issue. Yes, it's a disease in a way, but it's not lethal. You're not gonna die because of it, and you're not gonna limit yourself just because of that, and that's not all that you are. And you have other beautiful things about you, and let's embrace those beautiful things. Let's focus on those beautiful things and let them just flourish. Yeah. So thank you for watching. I hope you're doing really well. You can follow me on Instagram, Patreon and Twitter if you want, and that would be greatly appreciated, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.